Morning, you're welcome to macro teaching class EDT 311 and URL EDT 207. You're welcome to the class. So, we are looking at stimulus variation skill today. I mentioned it in the previous slide that I shared with you. That is in the set induction and the closure slide. So, let's quickly enter stimulus variation. Now, there are references to stimulus variation in the Bible and in the Quran. In Numbers 11:4 to 9, where the Bible talked about the children of Israel when they are moving out of the land of Egypt, they told Moses that they want God to give them fish, cucumber, melon, leeks, onions, and garlic. Because their soul is dried away, there's nothing at all except manna that they have been eating. If you check also in the Quran, you see where the Bible, the Quran said that, remember, he said, "Oh Moses, you cannot endure one kind of food always. So beseech your Lord to give us, to allow us to produce what the earth can give us, like pot, cucumbers, garlic, lentils, onions." So they are telling God that they want plenty of food, not just one kind of food. So you can see from the Bible and from the Quran that variety is allowed. So, like, what do you think happened that made the children of Israel complain about the food that God was giving them in the wilderness? You can drop your comment, but if you ask me, I'll say it's just because they have been eating one type of food always and they got bored with the oneness of the food that God is giving them. God had given them all varieties, perhaps they will not complain. So let's move on. So let's look at it. What do you think is your best food, your best car, your best wristwatch, best anything? Is there anything like best friend? Okay, or best anything? Is there something like that? If there is, then possibly you won't need. Can you be eating? Okay, my best food is pounded yam. Can you eat pounded yam morning, afternoon, night, morning, afternoon, night, morning, afternoon, night, morning, afternoon, night? Like eat it repeatedly like that for days and for weeks. You get tired, you get sick of it. Okay, the same thing with our clothes. Do we have the best clothes? Do we have the best shoe? That this is my favorite shoe. This is my favorite. So nothing is pleasant when it is not in varieties. Nothing is pleasant is not in varieties. Okay, so let's move on. That was said by Francis Bacon. Now, what is stimulus variation? The stimulus variation is the skill that you as a teacher you should have to vary the kind of stimulus that you give to your students. What is stimulus? Stimulus refers to any agent, any action, any condition that elicits, accelerates, or rouses physiological or psychological action in your students. Anything you do or tell them to do, any instruction you give your students that makes them think or that makes them to do something, that makes them to have a change of attitude to something, then that is a stimulus. So how do you vary it is the variation that you need to learn. How do you vary what you give to your students is an a skill that you need to learn. And the skill of stimulus variation involves that you deliberately change the attention drawing behavior in order to secure and sustain your student attention to what you are teaching. So that you secure and sustain the attention of students to what you are teaching them. Now let's continue. What is stimulus variation? It is the skill that you use to manipulate, to stimulate your students, increase their participation, their enthusiasm, and the spirit of study. How do you make them study? That is stimulus variation. It is a way by which you enhance your students' learning by helping them to remain attentive to what you are teaching them. Okay? Stimulus variation is a situation that changes the different ways by which you can maintain orienting activities to your students, and it is as a teacher you have to develop this skill so that you attract and hold the attention of students throughout your teaching. That's number one. So, how do you make your students attend to your instruction? Number one, through intensity. You see, sometimes when your mother tells you, "Iyabo, ba mi gbumi yẹn wá," and you are not answering, "Iyabo, mu kini yẹn wá," and you did not answer, what next do you think she will do? She will shout out, "Iyabo, mu kini yẹn wá." Okay, that is intensity. When you increase your voice, àgbà tí ò kẹrùn sọ̀rọ̀, So as agbalagba that you are in class, you have to do what Ken Soro. You shout, you increase the intensity of what you're saying. That is to drive home a point. I want you to do this thing. And you shout, get away from here. You could have said it the same way. Get away from here. It's different. Get away from here. It's different from get away from here. So one has intensity, the other does not. So which one do you think carries power? The one with intensity, exactly. Then you can use contrast also. Anything that contrasts, anything that stands out from the environment is contrast. So if you have been writing with black and you suddenly start writing with red, that red is the contrast. Okay. So anything that is different from the environment is the contrast. Then movement. If you look at this screen now, what do you think is the contrast? You could see that this point, make us is the contrast, right? Let me use another color. This point is a contrast. Okay, and then all these ones that are both, they are the contrast because they are the things that I want you to focus on. Then your movement is you can make students to attend to instruction. You cannot be in front of the class and leave the back of the class alone because they will be playing games, they'll be doing things that you don't want them to do. So you have to go and check what are they doing. Are they copying notes? You can be teaching a Greek science and a student will be having intro tech or mathematics note. It's copying mathematics note. But you are teaching a Greek science. If you do not move around, how will you be able to ensure that your students are attending to your class? Okay, so you have to move around. You have to give them instructional material that is able to hold their attention. Then your personal behavior is important. Don't be a teacher that sits in front of the class and is docile. You are not energetic. You are not stimulating. Your behavior itself is putting the students off. You have to be expressive. You have to be energetic. You have to be stimulating so that your attention should not be dull and monotonous one in front of your students. Okay, so you have to be all those. What are the components of stimulus variation? Number one is pausing. Number two is changing in audio and visual sequence. Number three, vary your method. The pausing, you cannot just be talking to allow pause. Okay, pause, silence for a while. It allows you to think about the next thing to say. It allows your students to think about what you have said, what you have discussed. Pause. It's important. Changing in audio and visual sequencing. When you have written note for them, don't explain. Okay, allow them to finish copying note. Then cover the note, then explain. Or if you explain and then you write notes for them. The same thing when you are using a projection screen. You are using a projection screen, allow them to check the projection screen. When it's time for you to talk about it, you blank it. Okay? But change in audio and visual sequencing. Then vary your methodology. What method are you using in your classroom? Demonstration, group work, project, dramatization, whatever it is. Vary it. Give assignments, give projects, give group work, give discussion, use lecture method, use everything. Variety is the spice of life. So let's move on. So what are the components? Teacher's movement, your movement, I talked about that. Then your gesture is important. As a teacher, what you are saying with your mouth, okay, is part of communication. Your gesture, how your hand is moving, how your face is moving, your eyes is moving, your body is moving, is part of the things your students must see in you. And so let us take light. Okay, so let's continue. So changes in your speech pattern is very, very important. Change your speech pattern such that the students can follow you, the pause, the stress patterns in your voices. They will be able to follow what it is that you're talking about. So, okay, so let's move on. What are other components of stimulus variation? You have to vary your questioning. If you want to ask questions based on different levels. Ask your students to analyze things. Ask your students to discuss things. Ask your students to evaluate things. Ask your students to do different things. It will enable them to use their brains beyond just asking them what is. Don't just be asking the question what is no. That's not it. Ask questions at various levels. And when students ask you questions, do not answer directly. Ensure that you give the question to another student to answer. So with that, you'll be able to ascertain whether this is a general problem or it's just peculiar to that student alone. Then develop listening skills. Don't assume that you know the question a student want to ask. A student want to ask a question and you're already saying, yeah, what is it that you want to ask? What do you want to ask? So you should listen. Okay, má ṣáájú ẹlẹ́ẹ̀dẹ́pẹ̀dẹ́ as a teacher. Allow the student to talk. Let the student finish the sentence then before you bring the answer. Then do not cut off a student when the student is asking a question or when the student is trying to explain something. Allow the student to learn. You are teaching not just the content, you are teaching moral there. Letting the students know that you allow somebody to finish a statement before you cut the sentence. So, what are other components of stimulus variation? Focusing is very important. Use your verbal focusing. Look here, listen to me. Note this one very carefully. This is very important. Those are statements you can make so that students will know that this thing that Oga just finished talking about, this thing that Master just finished talking about, this thing that Auntie just finished talking about is a very important part of the lesson that I need to focus on. So you use keywords like look here, listen, note this one carefully. This is very important. Observe this. Use those verbal focusing. You can use gesture focusing. You can point towards something like I want you to look at this on the board. I want you to look at this on the board. So you can use that kind of. That's why you have when you are going to class, you can go with a pointer. You can go with a marker, such that you can use your marker to point to something on the board. You can use your marker to point to something that I need you to note this. Then you can use verbal and gesture focusing together, whereby I say, okay, so I need you to underline this in your note. Okay, so by the time you do that, they underline it in their note, they see what you're talking about, and you are using both together: verbal focusing, gesture focusing, verbal. And what are other components of stimulus variation? Vary your non-verbal gesture as a teacher. Okay, when you are entering class, use your hand, use your eye, use your clap, stamp your feet. Don't go with cane to class always. Sometimes go to class with sweets and chewing gum. It's not every time you'll be beating students. And it's not every time you'll be giving them sweet and chewing gum also. So vary what you use to get attention in classroom. Then the student movement is very important. Give attention to your students' movement. Let them physically do something, especially when they are doing something like an experiment with the handling apparatus. When they are doing dramatization, how do you control their movement is very, very important. Then vary the sensory channels through which information is passed across to students. Okay, we get information through our senses, different senses that we are sense of smell, sense of hearing, touch, and sight. So let them learn through various senses. If there's something for them to smell, if there's something for them to eat. If you teach home economics, for instance, you want them to know the difference between the taste of salt and taste of sugar. Take salt to class, take sugar to class, then taste the two. Okay, you want them to know the difference between vinegar and which one the other one. So let them taste so that they will know the difference between Knorr and Maggi. You understand what I'm saying? So different senses can give us different information. So allow them to learn from various senses. Other components of stimulus variation includes oral to visual and visual to oral switching. I think I've mentioned this before. I think I explained this before. Now, variation in your interaction style is very important. It's very, very important. In your class, there will be three different types of interaction: the interaction between the teacher and the student, and the interaction between the students and the students, and then the interaction between the student and the teacher. Okay, so as a teacher, you allow the three interactions in your class, whether you like it or you don't like it. If you are a kind of teacher that does not allow your students to talk in class, your class would just be, I won't say boring, but it will be like an autocratic class where nobody is allowed to speak, and it will cause headache for you and for the students. Okay, so allow the three forms of interaction in your class and properly guide the application. Okay, properly guide the application. So let's look at Flanders interaction analysis. Flander interaction analysis. Flander is a man that talks about what are the kind of interactions that between a teacher and a student in class that could happen. So he looked at it that when a teacher is talking in the class, teacher should be doing these things. Number one, accepting the feelings of the students. You accept and clarify attitude and feelings of your student, the tone of students, how they are sitting down will even depict the kind of behavior they are bringing to class. I already told you, if your students are in class and they are sitting down slouching, you know that they are not sitting upright, they are not following you. But if they are sitting down upright, they are following you. Okay, so those are attitudes that you look at in class as a teacher, and you with that you will be able to determine the tone of how your class would continue. Okay, then when you praise and encourage your students, that's the second thing you do in your class as a teacher. You praise and you encourage your learners. You make jokes, not at the expense of others. And then number three, you accept and use the ideas of your pupils. Your pupils have ideas. They are not tabula rasa. They know this thing that you are teaching them. So you use their ideas. Okay, you you bring them out. Okay, you come and solve this problem on the board, and the student come and solve problem on the board. You are using the idea of this purpose, and then you ask questions as a teacher. You ask questions based on what you have taught them, based on what they must have learned in other class, based on what you feel they should have experienced from or in other clients. Then as a teacher, you lecture, of course you instruct, you give opinions, you give directions, you give commands, rub off the board, sweep the floor, pick up the debris in the class. You do all those things as a teacher. You criticize and justify authority before the students. Those are the things you do as a teacher. Okay, as a teacher, you criticize and justify authority so that you can change their behavior to acceptable pattern, what we intend to see in the society. So for our students, these are the things we expect students to be able to do. Students talk to themselves in discussions. Students they ask questions to students from the teachers. Okay, so they talk to themselves and they ask questions. Those are the things we expect the students to be able to do. And lastly, in Flanders interaction analysis categories, we have silence. Okay, silence silence is important because these are short periods of time in which communication is not happening between the teacher and the students, whereby you allow people to think, you allow people to reminisce over what you have taught them, or whether the student just finish asking questions and what you want to answer. That period of pause is silence. So that's Flanders interaction analysis. You apply all these to give variety to your classroom. Okay, let's move on. You should understand that sameness is the mother of disgust. That is, when something is just the same, the same, the same, the same, the same, it gets disgusting sometimes. Okay, but variety is the cure. Who does not like fruit salad? So between eating watermelon, and having fruit salad, which one do you prefer? Fruit salad, of course. So I'll take us through communication process in the next class. Please make sure you watch it, and I'll be dropping questions after that. Have a nice day.